My name is Ralph White. I'm an alcoholic. I'm glad you put this passage up because I was like, I don't have a passage from the book. Uh, the wars which had been fought, the burnings and chicanery the religious dispute had facilitated made me sick. I honestly doubted whether, on balance, the religions of mankind had done any good. Judging from what I had seen in Europe and since, the power of God in human affairs was negligible. The brotherhood of man a grim jest. If there was a devil, he seemed like the boss universal, and he certainly had me. But my friend sat before me and he made the point blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he had admitted complete defeat. Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he had ever known. Had this power originated in him? Obviously, it had not. There had been no more power in him than there was in me that at that minute, and this was none at all. And so this is in Bill. So do you guys have a timer up for me somewhere? No. Okay, so how much time am I talking,
50
Joey?
minutes. 50
How
minutes.
much?
50 minutes.
Okay, let me get my time. Um, so this, and I want to welcome anybody that's new. Thank you for putting that up. I want to welcome anybody that's new, although we didn't ask for people. I still want to acknowledge, and if you're new and just taking this ride with us, and maybe if you're not, if you're new to our book, this passage that I read was um, is so appropriate today for all of us. Is happy birthday of sorts. Today is Founders Day for Alcoholics Anonymous. June the 10th of 1935 is the date of Mark Dr. Bob's birthday, which is the date of our co-founder. And it started back at this passage that I just read. You know, Bill Wilson, who is our co-founder, was on his last legs. And this was in about November of 1934. And he was sitting at his kitchen table, and he had had no more friends. Everybody was gone. He had driven everybody out of his life. And he was sitting at his kitchen table, as he put it, nursing a drink. He's a gin drinker. I'm a gin drinker. Gin and roses lime juice was my staple. And he was drinking, and he got a call from one of his boys, Ebby Thatcher. And him and Ebby used to get loaded together. They did some crazy stuff together. Read about it, and some wild things. And, you know, like me, especially when you sitting up getting loaded by yourself and then somebody called, I start thinking, oh, that's fresh money. We're going to really get one on, right? But Ebby shows up at the house. And Bill says when Ebby showed up at his door, he almost didn't recognize him. He said it was something different about his eyes. And he called him fresh face and glowing, fresh skin and glowing. And he invited him in the house. Ebby was sober, stunned Bill, was not expecting that. Hadn't seen him that way in a long time. But he's not tripping because Bill drinking. And they sit at the table. And Bill says, so what's going on? He said Ebby was not himself. He was so used to Ebby being loaded that when he was sober, he said he wasn't himself. And so he said, so man, what's going on with you? And Ebby said, I got religion. And Bill said, oh, hell no. I done let a Jehovah Witness up in my house. He gonna start preaching at me. I'm sitting here trying to get my drink on. He gonna be bringing me down. Oh man, but I'm cool because I got my drink and he can preach as long as he wants to, right? If he had been me, I'd have also been plotting how I'm gonna get $20 out of Ebby. Because if he was sober, I figure he got some money. And but Bill is drinking, and Ebby didn't start preaching, you guys. Abby starts talking to Bill about what had happened to him. He had been about to get locked up for his latest escapade, and two guys had shown up in court, and they had convinced the judge, who was one of the guys' dad, they had convinced the judge, hey man, let him go in our custody, and these two guys, Roland Hazard and Shep Cannell, and they have been members of the Oxford group. And so they took Abby Thatcher to the Oxford group, and Abby Thatcher in the Oxford group, had gotten about 60 to 90 days sober. And in the Oxford group, part of their get down was, when you've been in here a certain amount of time, now it's time for you to go testify. You got to go find somebody and spread the good news. Different than Alcoholics Anonymous. We're not evangelists. We don't go out spreading the news like that. But the Oxford group, so Abby was thinking, who do I know? And he said, oh, I got a boy. And so he went and called on Bill Wilson, violated everything we know about 12-step calls. He went by himself. He hadn't been sober that long. He went to a drunk who was drinking, all that stuff. One of the first instances when we start thinking about what holds us together this morning, which is this divine appointment for each and every one of us. And each one of us is fulfilling one of those appointments today when we show up here. And whether we think it, know it, whatever, we show up here and we gather. And so Abby did something that went against everything. One of the first, and he shows up at Bill Wilson's house, hadn't been sober long. And Bill Wilson starts thinking, when Abby's sitting at his table, we speak a lot about miracles in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we speak about watershed moments. One of the first ones that all of us know about, and if you're new, this may be new to you, when Bill Wilson had his own experience a little bit later on. But I think equally as miraculous, if that's how you want to put it, was what went on at that little apartment, or at that little house on Clinton Street, when things took place that didn't have any business taking place. A guy shows up, not even 90 days sober. He sits with a wet drunk who's drinking. We don't recommend that, newcomers. We don't recommend that you go to your buddy's house or go up in a dope house or try to carry the message up in there. You're going to probably not emerge from that rather than bringing them out. But something happened. And so when those two guys were sitting at that table, Bill Wilson's spirit got disturbed as to this matter of this God idea. He wasn't thinking that. And he started thinking back on the way he was raised. His granddaddy used to take him to church, and his granddad was a free thinker. His granddad was not just a guy that listened, and his granddad would talk about and miss me with some of that stuff. And so Bill Wilson, sitting at the table, what we read this morning is the result of when those two men met. And so now his spirit is disturbed as to this, where do I stand on this God idea? Because Abby mentioned this religion. And so he's thinking about, man, if there was a God in this universe, why are they sitting up here fighting? Why are they over in Iran right now, and Iran and US and Israel? Why are they doing all that stuff? Why was there this big horrific accident that I saw when I drove up the street yesterday, and innocent people are laid out in the street? Why are babies born stillborn? Why are people and so he's going through all this stuff in his head. The objections that he raises about why there can't be a God in this. And he concluded, it seems to me that if there's any power in this world, because he's drunk, he drinking and he thinking, and he's kind of like me, blocked, cynical, skeptical, as to this idea of religion. And if it's anything that seems to be in charge right now, he called it the devil, and he seemed to be the boss universal. And then he said something critical. He said, and if that's the case, he seemed like he had me. And when I'm sitting around up in the dope house and I'm smoking, or I'm doing the aimless walk in the middle of the night, and I'm doing it every night. And it wasn't just an occasional walk. It was a walk. That walk, I'm walking it out for the last 2 years of my getting loaded, right? And so I'm deep in it, and he's got me. I wouldn't say if the devil was the boss universal, he got me, but I said, the life, it's got your boy. I'm gone, and so if it's any power in this world, miss me with that, and so he's going through all this, but then something else hit him, and he looked, and this is the thing about, I'd rather see a sermon than hear a sermon. This is the thing about a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is the thing about evidence. He's looking. So everything in me is making the argument about why, later on in our chapter, we agnostics, I got this argument about why men can't fly while I'm looking up in the air at an airplane. Somebody was talking, I was at a meeting. Oh God. And somebody said just not too long ago that it's impossible for a hummingbird aerodynamically to fly, but they fly, right? It's impossible. And I tell myself, the world, no, ain't nothing, ain't no God, ain't none of this, But he looked at his boy and then he said, check this out. And here's the power of what we do. Differentiates us from church. Differentiates us from a lot of other movements, and a lot, at least for me. Let me speak for me. What differentiates us? Because I could go in other places where people are godly and they're talking about God and they talk about matters. The matters we talk about is not unique to us. And we'll talk about those norms, like there's some other species or something, or like we have something that we invented, and everything that we have of a spiritual nature that has found its way into our literature is from other places. So don't get confused about that. We don't have a corner on that market, but we have a corner on the market that sings to me. I could sit in Tabernacle of Faith Baptist Church side by side with Mama, and Mama heard music that sang to her in Tabernacle. All of them, not just the music, but the preaching, because the music always sang to me too. But when we left Tabernacle of Faith, the message Mama got and the message were out, two different ones. It wasn't sufficient. And it wasn't that a message wasn't taking place there, but my ears are not attuned to that frequency, right? My ears are attuned to the AA frequency, the CA frequency. That's when my ears are attuned to, the 12-step frequency. And so, when Bill Liston, so when he's talking about all this stuff that it raised in him, and here's the point I was going after. He says, when he looked at Abby and he said, something that happened to my boy, and I know he couldn't pull it off and bring it off himself because he got down with me. He used to sit in the spot with me. Me and him used to do some of the same shenanigans, and to top it off, he worse than me. So I know this power that he says he has, this power that allows him to look at me drinking and he ain't drinking. I know that's not of him. I'm seeing something that don't make sense, but I'm seeing it in the seed. A month or about 3 weeks later, after that encounter, Abby leaves Bill and Bill is still drinking. And about 3 weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later, Bill finds himself in Towns Hospital, third or fourth time that year. And in that hospital, he had overheard the doctor give his wife what almost amounted to a death sentence. Told him, get a black dress. He's not coming out this time. If he comes out, he's going to have to be locked up, or he's going to have a wet brain. He's going to be dead, or he's going to have to be, he's done. His goose is cooked, so get a black dress, Lois. Bill heard that. So Bill is in the hospital this night and he's tripping. And I believe the convergence of everything. He had heard that death sentence, so that kind of got his attention, even though he had heard the doctor say that about him before, but that caught his attention. But this Abby Thatcher visit had disturbed his spirit more than he knew. I think a seed that got dropped down in there. And so he's in Towns Hospital and he's in his room by himself. And this thought just comes over him. And he said, okay, God, if there is one, you need to show me something right now. Right now. I ain't playing with you. This is some book. If it's something going on, you need to show me. And he showed him something. Bill Wilson would later describe what happened to him in Towns Hospital that December in 1934. He said he would call it a white light experience, and he described it, and it tripped him out. And he called Silkworth in his room. Silkworth was Dr. William D. Silkworth, who, for our new friends, wrote the chapter, The Doctor's Opinion, in the front of our book. And Silkworth had seen Bill Wilson several times up in his hospital. He knew his act. He had seen him coming and going. He had heard his promises. He had seen his act before. And when Bill Wilson had this white light experience, it scared him. And he called Silkworth. He called him out. Hey, Doc, come to my room, right? And I'm glad it happened to Bill Wilson and it didn't happen to me, because had that happened to me, I'm in the hospital by myself. All of a sudden the wind starts coming through the room. Windows are closed. Light comes on. I'm tripping. It feels like a cold wind is blowing through me. Oh, I'd have thought it was a PCP flashback. We wouldn't even have no program. We wouldn't have I'd have just been. But it happened to the right man at the right time, in the right place. Because when he called Silkworth, let's connect dots. When we talk about this program being spiritually inspired, there are lots of reasons we say that. Starting with what happened on Clinton Street with Bill Wilson and Ebby Thatcher. When we look back, that 12-step call that should not have been, that sent us on the path where we are. And then when you think about what happened in Towns Hospital. So Bill Wilson called Silkworth in his room, and check this out. He described what happened to him. Silkworth, it didn't happen to Silkworth. Silkworth ain't even one of us. Silkworth wasn't in the room. Silkworth had seen Bill Wilson several times, so he should have thought, this dude is hallucinating, or here he is with that drag again, or here he is trying to get him. He should have thought a lot of stuff. But the power of what takes place when something, and the best way, one of the descriptors of this guy for me is something happened. And when something happens and it gets you like that, when that kind of grace gets you, apparently, it was apparent from the doctor, from the outside looking in. When he saw Bill Wilson and Bill Wilson described what happened to him, from the outside looking in, it was so profound. The doctor said, I don't know what else happened, dude, but you would look good holding on to it. What? Why would he talk? It was apparently what had happened was so profound and so overwhelming that the doctor saw it. And Bill Wilson left the next piece, miracle piece, when this happened to him, and in the moment, he thought for himself, I'm done. He thought, I'm done. Bill Wilson thought at the moment that he had his white light experience that this obsession to drink had been lifted from him and he would not be drinking anymore. Now, that's okay to have that thought, which was crazy, but he believed it to his core. But the next thought I would have had if I had believed something like that would be, now I need to get on my feet. I need to get out here and get my hustle and my grind on. Me and my old lady, we've been put out of houses. We done stayed in 22 places in the last 2 or 3 years. We've been all over, pillar to post. I've taken her through it. I love my girl, and she's been by my side. She deserves a man I'm going to go back to work. He had been successful in his business, in his field. I'm going to get back to work. I'm going to get this money. I'm going to start. But that's not what he thought. First thing that happened is, maybe I could find some other drunks to work with. Now he's still in the hospital. He ain't got one day, let alone, and he's thinking about finding somebody to work with. And he left the hospital and he set about looking for people like me and you, right? And so he's out preaching to him. You got to have this white. You got to have this experience. And everybody, go somewhere, man. You messing up my high. Stop it. Wasn't nobody paying no attention to Bill Wilson, because he out preaching and grabbing drunks off bar stools. You got to have it, man. And he go home and tell his old lady, man, Lois, ain't nobody feeling me. Ain't nobody getting sober. What is going on? And Lois gave him the famous words that we all know about. Lois, he said, ain't nobody staying sober. And Lois told him, hey, Bill, you are. You are. Seed planting. He'd make note of that later. So he goes to Silkworth and he hollers at Silkworth and tells Silkworth. Silkworth say, dude, you need to quit preaching. Why don't you hit him over the head with this hopeless feature? Hit him over the head. Give him this idea that, man, there's something different about me, bodily different. That I suffer from something that separates me. But anyway, hit him with that feature, Bill. So Bill now, about 6 months in, I didn't mean to come in here and talk to you guys about the history, but it's our Founders Day. It's our birthday, right? And so Bill, in this, so he's staying sober, and he had been a guy that had done some things, right? And so some of his people were putting together this business opportunity, and they saw he was sober, and they called on the old Rainmaker. They used to make money for him, right? And they called Bill Wilson up and they said, hey, man, why don't you go down to Akron, Ohio, represent our interests in this proxy fight that's going on down there. And if you're successful, and please don't get drunk and show your ass on us, Bill. But if you're successful down there, it's money in it for you. It's a vice presidency in it. You'll be set. And he needed to be set, right? Just think about it, you guys. He's been ass out for a long time. Just think about when you getting sober and you newly sober and your bank account is at zero. You probably in debt. Some of us have been homeless before, been jobless, got a 2-year gap on the resume, if you mean, and all that. And 6 months in, and now you get this promising opportunity and you excited. Hell yeah. So he go down to Akron and his business didn't come off too well. And he found himself pacing a hotel room, when the business fell through. He had $10 in his pocket, pay for his room, get a drink. He's in the lobby of the Mayflower Hotel, and you could see the bar from the lobby. You could hear the ice clinking in the glasses, right? And he's sitting there, and he gets thirsty. And he's thinking to himself, I could sit here because I knew this was some bullshit. This trying to get sober thing, ain't nobody else getting sober. I tried to do this business deal. It didn't come off. I knew not to get my hopes up. I knew guys like me don't get second chances. I knew this wasn't for me. I knew, man, I shouldn't have put my hopes up here like this. Anybody else I always have that sense of impending doom, scared to hope, scared to dream, scared to get your hopes up, because getting your hopes up is what, but God damn it, getting them dashed hurts so much that you just don't dare to dream. And so you're sitting in that lobby and you're thinking to yourself, I don't even know what I was fooling myself for. I don't even know why I tried to. I'm talking about this sober thing. Maybe it's just a one-off for me, and he got thirsty. And a strange thought came to him, standing in the lobby of the Mayflower Hotel. He said, I've been all these months, trying to find a drunk so they don't drink. And a thought came, I need to find a drunk so I don't drink. Turn on a dime. That's what our program is. We don't work with others to get them sober. We work with others so we stay sober. And our first, evidence of that, what we would become, took place in the lobby of the Mayflower Hotel, and the day before Mother's Day in 1935. And Bill Wilson made some calls, and through a series of divine coincidences, he got put in touch with a lady who knew a man who was part of her group at the Oxford group. So Henrietta Seiberling, who had been praying for a sign. And she said later she wasn't surprised to get this call from Bill Wilson. I'm a rum hound from New York, and I'm looking for somebody. And she said, I got just the person. And he called Ann Smith, and Dr. Bob was passed out. Another thing, he was ripe for a call. Because I ain't no stranger gonna be calling me, getting all up in my business, calling my old lady, hey man, I hear you got a husband that's drinking. I like to talk. Man, who is that on the phone again? Who? I don't know him. No, I'm not. But he was in the doghouse, right? He had passed out day before Mother's Day. He down here loaded, passed out. So when you like that, you at the mercy of your spouse because you already done tore your drawers one more time. And so now, all right, I see him. And so they met the next day, and his son, Scotty, and I met Scotty. Smitty. Smitty was driving, and Smitty said when he was 15 years old, and he drove Dr. Bob that day over to the gatehouse at the Cyberling Estate, and I mean at the Cyberling Estate, and so they go down there and they meet at the gatehouse, and right before they get out the car, Dr. Bob said, "I'm gonna give this clown 15 minutes." Baby, I'm doing this for you. I could just hear it because that would be me, but I'm trying to be magnanimous. Mother's Day. And I'm going to get us through 15 minutes. Then I need you to knock, and Henrietta Cyberly put them in this room. If you ever got a chance, if you go to Akron, Ohio, part of the tours they'll do is the gatehouse at the Cyberling Estate. And you can go down there and you can see where they met. And it's a little spot. And you go in this room and you sit at the table and they have it. And I just sat and thought about that. And they didn't know when they sat in that little room 91 years ago. They didn't know that meeting they had would lead to this meeting we're having. They didn't know. They were just two drunks. One drunk sharing with another. And for the first time, Dr. Bob said, there's a guy who understands. And if you come in here for the first time, if you coming in out of the cold, smoked out like I was October the 11th of 1986, and came in out of the cold and found the people who understand. Found the people who know what it is when you say, I get paid on Thursday. And people in the rooms knew what that meant. That meant, okay, I'm scared. It's my first payday. On payday, this is what happens for me. Money loaded. I didn't even have to say it. I didn't even know it. People knew what that meant. They knew to call for help. They knew to call, okay, these are the people who understand that it's something about, sleeping and that feeling is on you and your wife is sleeping with the purse up under the pillow and you got that thing on you because you've been out getting loaded. And it's something about, when it's on you and money is just an arm's length away and you crawl out the bed in the middle of the night when you hear that your wife's steady breathing come in and you crawl on that other side and you go up under the pillow real slow and you pull that purse out and you go. And they knew in these rooms that that wasn't your plan and that wasn't your design and that wasn't your thought and that wasn't how you didn't get proud of that. Look at me, I'm doing a commando crawl and I could get, you wouldn't know. No, the people who understand what it's like on Christmas when they're opening presents and you somewhere else out in the street and you doing what you do and you think to yourself, next year, I'm going to get that girl something. The people who understand. And so those two gentlemen sat and they had a long meeting and that 15 minutes turned into almost 5 hours. And they set about looking for people like me and you. And they found a guy, first guy they found. I think God smiles on us. And they had a hardening success. First time out. Probably got drunk on that idea of it's going to be like this every time. They went down to City Hospital down there in Akron, Ohio, and they found a guy who was a hard case, Bill Dotson, AA number 3. A lot of you have seen the iconic picture of the two men on the beds in suits and the other thin guy in a wife beater, and he's sitting on the bed. That's Bill Dodson. And he had hit a nurse, and he was a lawyer, and he was one who thought there was no hope for him. Most of our original fellowship, or what we described in our literature as last gaspers, it's interesting. Our formation came at a time when there wasn't a lot of money, and that's a good thing. The way that God works and the way he smiles on us. I think some of the elements for us to be here today were in place. 1934, 1935, the country was in a depression here in the States. We're in a depression, and so it wasn't a lot of money. So almost everybody. When I first started going through the book, I had this idea that the fellowship was comprised of this middle-aged white men who had money and came from privilege. Well, some of them had started with money at one time or the rest, but our fellowship, our initial profile, if you will, was comprised of last gaspers, desperate cases, and if you go into 12 and 12, it talks about, one of the reasons, and old timers used to say that was a requisite. If you got a watch, you ain't ready, and then, there was a kernel of truth in something like that. And that is this, one of the qualities that I know for myself needed to be in place to even embark on a journey like this, where you didn't have an endpoint, where you don't see the light, where you coming in at 33 years old and you've been down so long, the thought of getting up didn't even come to mind anymore. Why try? Our problems pile up on us and become astonishingly difficult to solve. So, and the way that looks is 33 years old, don't know where your little girl is enrolled in school, don't know where your family is living, haven't been in anybody's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock wake-up call to go to work in so long, no longer thought I was employable, didn't have a bank account, couldn't open a bank account, was cashing my checks at Nick's check casher because I was on what's called check systems. I had bounced so many checks, they wouldn't let me open a bank account. I owed the IRS $80,000. I hadn't looked at myself full face, and that's the material stuff. The other stuff, which ran deeper, hadn't looked at myself full face in the mirror in over 2 years. Couldn't trust myself. No longer had the self-confidence I once had. No longer had, I was a working guy. I hadn't been to work in a long time. How are you going to explain this 2-year gap on your resume? Didn't know if you'd ever be welcome in your mama's house anymore. Didn't know if you'd be welcome in your own house anymore. Didn't know if you'd ever be, guys like me. I had been in management in the law department of a major utility company. I had the job, had risen up there, had, 80 employees working, and guys like me don't get second chances. I already blew mine, and so problems pile up. And so why try? It just seems easier to curl up, because at the end, the only time that I had a glimmer or relief from this head or from the circumstances of my life, the situation I was in, the only time I felt anything like happy was just after copping. Just after copping. Because once I start getting loaded, halfway through, I'm getting sad already. That's a cold place to be. So I'm smoking, and to stop from thinking about where smoking had taken me. That's what I'm doing. It's no joy. It's no partying. It's no clubbing. It's no freak parties. It's none of that. All that had taken place at one time, but at the end, getting it, doing it, coming down from it. Getting it, doing it, coming down from it. Getting it, doing it, coming down from it. Only time of happiness is just after copping. After that, it's downhill because I'm already knowing I'm going to get sad. I'm trying to extend. This business we talk about of living one day at a time. I think one of the reasons why I sink so deep into the life is because, curiously, we talk now in recovery about being in the now, right? We talk about I contend, for me, I'm not saying this for anybody else, might prove contrary, I don't know. The closest I've ever been to living in the now was when I was gone, when it had me. When I be in a motel, when I got this 20, especially if I got a little something, then I got at least a G or an H or an A for something. When I'm in the now. I'm not thinking about that little girl needs some diapers. I'm not thinking about, you're supposed to have been home with them girls. I'm not thinking about, this is rent money and rent is due tomorrow. I'm not thinking about, tomorrow is Christmas and you ain't got, I'm not thinking about, I'm in this. The problem is halfway through this, I know I'm going to get assailed by the enemy. He comes calling when all the dope and all the money is gone. What happened to you? You used to want to be somebody. What happened to you? You used to get up and go to work in the morning. What happened to you? You used to make your mom smile. What happened to you? You and your girl used to laugh and hug and party and go to concerts. What happened to you? Visits from the enemy, I call it. And so when you sink that deep in the life, you guys, and you that entrenched in the life, and you can't afford to shut that here. The only thing you can do is shut it down. You can't afford to look at the mess that you made because it don't get cleaned up. You don't know. When you sitting here and you see all these people, over 100 people sitting in here right now, and you do it day after 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 day, you don't realize the journey we're on. You don't realize the infusion. You don't realize what's taking place in here. Some of you thumpers don't get carried away. Some people try to say, oh, meat and base, Brian, everything we do. There's nothing wasted in God's economy. Remember, nothing is wasted in God's economy. Every time I sit at a meeting, I don't care if I'm sitting at a meeting and some people, oh, I'm not going to those disgusting meetings. And I'm not trying to take a stand. Be what you are, do what you do. But for me, there's nothing that's been wasted in here at all. So when I go to a meeting, every time I go to one, my architecture, I'm being rebuilt and my hard drive, something's coming off that drive. Because when you come from, I was as addicted to the lifestyle as I was to the drinking and using. So when you coming out the life, a lot of times people think, oh, I'm going to go for a weekend and I'm going to do a big book stuff and I'm coming out the life. It ain't going to be a weekend. There is so much that is required. So much that's required to step out of that and step into this. And every bit of it is on offer. That's the good news. Every bit of it. When we read chapter 3, in chapter 3, I like should be subtitled Mental States That Precede a Relapse in the Drinking, because it discusses a lot of that. But chapter 3 has some interesting stuff up in it. It's got like 4 different scenarios. One of them is, you've got the carpet slipper guy, the guy that saw he had a problem, said, okay, I'm a chill. I'm not going to drink. Not too many people can be the carpet slipper guy, because clearly he must have been a heavy drinker, because if I could do that, I wouldn't need to be here. Carpet slipper guy said, okay, I see I got a problem. I'm going to hold off. I'm going to make this money. I'm going to raise this family. I'm going to send them kids to college. I'm going to kick back now. I done did all that. I'm going to kick back after 25 years of doing that. 4 years later, bam, gone, drunk, dead. Start drinking 4 years later, he gone. Now, the carpet slipper guy is a good, I guess, example for somebody, not for most of us here. If any of y'all here can say, I'm going to stop and kick it for 25 years, go ahead. Just don't try to do the last piece. But the carpet slipper guy, and the lesson from that is, no matter how long I've been sober, I can't afford to go back, because it's going to pick up. Not where I left off. It's going to pick up as if I had never stopped. the progression of the disease of alcoholism. And so that's the lesson for the carpet slipper guy. Then you get the jaywalker. Now, the jaywalker is just a cute analogy and metaphor, but it's a great one because I'm that guy. I'm that guy that starts out, hey, it's fun and games, Tyrolia, Boone's Farm, Annie Green Springs, Yago Sangria, some harmless commercial weed. And then, as I get a little bit older, I get clipped, not too serious, not too much happens with that. But now I'm drinking, I done started going to my Hennessy and my Southern Comfort and now I'm smoking Colombian and then some hash and some hash oil. Now some cocaine gets introduced to the mix and some stuff starts happening a little more. I get clipped a little more and feel a little more effects and consequences, start missing class, getting withdrawals from classes. Now I'm on academic probation and I come out of school a year, like stuff starts happening, lose. First credit card I got, was max. I already got bad credit before I'm 21 years old. Anyway, stuff starts happening as a result of the life, and then, I start smoking and I'm getting older. I got clipped. Now I'm running in front of fast moving, not trolley car, trains. Smoking, that's running in front of fast moving goddamn trains, and I'm out there and I get clipped. And the thing about the jaywalker analogy, which fits in life, you start getting older, and the older you get and the slower you get because now you done got hurt and the more chances you take. Now I'm running in front of faster trains and I'm slower. I'm older. I'm hurt more. Duh. That's a recipe for disaster. So you got him. Then you get the Jim guy. And Jim was the guy that came in early, got a little bit of the program. Some of you relapsers know, did the 1, 2, 3, cha-cha-cha. Yeah, I know I got this problem. I know I got it. I know what I need to do. I know. So I know, but I ain't doing. And so Jim, they say he didn't enlarge and perfect his spiritual life. So he made a beginning. Jim goes out, put some whiskey and milk because I ain't, I go out and I go to the speakeasy. I'm sitting there. I'm a smoker, you guys. I'm admitting I'm an alcoholic, but that's because it's the price of admission to talking means. I like talking. So I admit I'm an alcoholic, but I ain't really a believer. And I sit at the speakeasy and I drink this Long Island iced tea. That's almost equivalent to Jim with whiskey and milk. Me drinking a Long Island as a smoker is, that ain't really, I drank that Long Island, forgot. I'm a drink. I don't play with nothing I do, right? I'm hard in the paint with everything, weed, alcohol, herb. Blow, then smoking. I'm hard. I'm all in. Scared, get you busted. That's my motto. If you scared, get a dog. All that stuff. That's me. That's me. And I'm not a tough guy, but put me in the life. And so Jim, he gets loaded on, like that. And then you have Fred, the one I identify with the most. And Fred, when Fred first started having, he wasn't a believer. I hear what y'all saying. If I ever got that bad, I quit. I got a family, I got money, I got a good job. People listen to me. I'm a mover and a shaker. He go off to Washington to do some of his moving and shaking. He does his moving and shaking. He has a good trip down there. He goes off, man, this is cool. Let me relax with a couple of highballs. And next thing you know, he on a run up to beat all runs. And Fred comes in ass tattered, right? And he sits up and the AA people call on him, and Fred, the autopsies, the visit to Washington, and he looks back at what happened, and he said, and he talked to the AA people, and Fred said some things that, really stick with me. He said the proposals that they put forth, he said they were drastic. They were drastic. They meant to destroy, but he said once he accepted them, he had the curious sensation that his alcohol problem had been lifted, as indeed it later proved to be. Once I went to Harbor Light, October the 13th of 1986, you guys, I had the curious sensation. I ain't going to get loaded no more, and I haven't. That's not everybody's story, and that's not something I could know. I only know it looking back, but I can tell you I had that feeling. I was 33 years old, and I was done. I had tried you guys a couple of times. But when I went up in there, when Fred said when he accepted the proposals, when I went in there, I had to shoot and say, I'm done. I'm done. Ass whooped. Goose cooked. Done deal. Stick a fork. So I'm in there. But Fred said something else. This is one of my favorite things. Fred said, quiet is important. Quiet is important is discovering that what you guys are offering me is a way out of drinking and using. Quite as important as discovering that what you guys are offering me is a way to put the horn down and a way to put the bottle down and a way to not pick the J up. Quite as important was the discovery. The spiritual principles would solve all my problems. So I'm 33 and I'm coming in and I know I need to get this horn off me. I know I need to get the gorilla off the block. I know that you guys may offer that for me. And so I come in here and I'm shopping. I'm shopping for a cure for the disease. I'm shopping for a cure for this that I can't get it off me. And I can't get out the life. I'm shopping. But when that happens, next, I'll probably have to then address this money problem. I have to address this family problem. I have to address this employment problem. I have to, hold on, dude. Hold on. We got good news for you, Ralph. We got one-stop shopping. You can come in here into this program and you can sign up for the whole package. One-stop shopping. Same power, same program, same process that took the bottle out your mouth and the horn out your mouth. Same process, same power that'll stand you up and make you a dad in your girl's life. Same power, same process that took the bottle out your mouth and the pipe out your mouth. Same power and the same process that'll make you a gainfully employed employee. Same power, same process that took the pipe out of your mouth and the bottle out of your mouth. Same power and the same process that will allow you to be there for your mama in her last days and giving her the best last year. Same power, same process. One-stop shopping. That's what we had to offer. And those two gentlemen 91 years ago, when they started us on this path that have us where we are today, oh man, why wouldn't you want to be a member of this fellowship? Who wouldn't want to be? There are times on the road, I've been doing this 39 plus years, and there have been times on the road I've skinned my knees. I fell on my face. There have been times I've wanted to stop. There have been times that I've been very discouraged. There's been times that I get scared. I've been broke. I've been heartbroken. I've had things happen, that I know. In fact, and I don't think I'm by myself. I don't think I'm by myself. How many people on here have been broke before? How many people on here have been heartbroken? How many people on here have felt betrayed or abandoned? How many people on here have lost a job? How many people on here have suffered the death of a loved one or a death of somebody close? How many people on here have felt discouraged or scared or frustrated? Is there anybody on here right now scared, frustrated, worried, feels like it's in there? Anybody in here in a dark space right now? When I get in the dark, for everybody that's in the dark, for the rest of you guys, put it on the shelf for when you walk in there, because the life is just life. And for folk like us, it's not so much that life presents problems. It's the way that I see life. I'm going to always see problems, even when life don't present. But for those who are in something right now, for those who are in something that feels like, okay, God, you cut my slice a little bit too thick. For those right now who feel like, I'm getting some relief on this, but goddamn, when I get off, I got to think about it. I got some questions for you. The first question I want you to ask yourself: do you think God's bag is empty? Do you think his bag is empty? When I get scared, I ask myself that. Next question I want you to ask yourself: do I think God has forgot my name? When I go to those places, sometimes don't it feel like that? Next question: do I believe God has lost my address? When I get scared, it feels like that sometimes. Then I got this question for you: do I believe that He saved me from the cesspool to let me drown in the bathtub? When I get scared, it seems like that. And the last thing: have I survived everything that I've been scared of up to this point? So apparently I got 100% survival rate, particularly trusting in God. I want to let you know something, one of his favorites. My job, this business that we're in, we're participating in it right now, this business of grace. And I think what we become is grace receptors. We've been grace deflectors for a very long time. What happens when we enter this process of recovery and we enter this pact with each other? And when we do here, what we do, we generate some stuff that we don't generate by ourselves. And so this business of opening myself up to the grace, because the grace has always been available. I've been blocked. And so this 12-step process of uncovering, discovering, and discarding allows me to become a grace magnet, a great grace receptor. And so every time we get together, particularly on this day of days for all of us, this day of days for all of us, don't be scared. You built for hard things. You built for whatever it is in front of you. He did not save me from the cesspool. Let me drown in the bathtub. Happy birthday, Alcoholics Anonymous. And thank you guys. My name is Ralph White. I'm an alcoholic.